It's highly likely you or a family member have played video games. They've become so popular that an estimated 216 million Americans consider themselves gamers. That's more than half the country's population. And today's video games are a far cry from Pong and Pac Man, for better and for worse.
I'm currently actually looking at the darker sides of games and how games are being leveraged for radicalization and the mobilization of radical networks.
We could post somebody to make a Nazi game on Roblox, let alone one of such expanse.
Alex Newhouse and Dr. Rachel Kowert are behind a groundbreaking study on the evolution of gaming and the platform's growing use to promote extreme ideologies and radicalization.
I personally focus mostly on the far right. And it appears that the far right is the most interested in using game platforms. But jihadists, Islamists, like they also engage with gaming platforms. They try to recruit teens and adolescents.
It's a very small group of people, but it's a very powerful group of people.
For those who believe they or their kids are safe from extreme propaganda, the Anti-Defamation League has found close to 1 in 4 people are exposed to white supremacist ideologies on the internet. That's about 54 million Americans.
It was so shocking to me that the number was 23%. I was like, it can't be 23%. Like, that is so high. How is that possible?
So shocking, it became the catalyst for Kowert and Newhouse to dive into the research in order to raise awareness. One aspect behind this trend is the combining of video games with streaming platforms or social networking apps.
Discord and Twitch, which aren't games, those are called, we refer to those as gaming adjacent platforms. And then things like Minecraft and Roblox, which have some sort of interactivity, those are games.
Given this overlap, players can stream live gaming sessions or connect with complete strangers through chats and forums, which can be great, but also dangerous.
Games were created as games first and social platforms second, but the problem is that the growth of games as kind of social networking spaces has exponentially outpaced the rate at which the gaming industry has kept up with their moderation.
Discord, a social media platform for gamers, was specifically identified in 2020 as a hub and community for right-wing extremism. In Europe, the country's counterterrorism coordinator doubling down on that warning, saying extremists are increasingly present in digital gaming spaces.
They shouldn't be leaving the game with strangers, just like you wouldn't leave the park with a stranger. If somebody's saying, hey, why don't you leave this gaming space and come join me and these other people you don't know on a third-party server, that's usually a red flag, especially for younger children.
Even so, Rachel points out the research finds there are game spaces that provide more good than bad. She adds there is a darkness, however, which is why she and her colleague are working to make games a safer place.
I was a former extremist. I de-radicalized almost 20 years ago. I was part of a organization called the Rolling Wood Skins, which was a offshoot of one of the largest national socialist or Nazi movements in the United States.
Ryan Lowry shared with CBN about his former life as a prominent neo-Nazi, with the goal of taking online hate groups mainstream.
It's in every platform you go to. These recruiters, whether it's through jihadism or domestic terrorism, whatever it might be, they've adapted to and know where they need to be and how to find the most vulnerable people.
In finding ways to finance his mission and move in the ranks, Lowry got into trouble with the law. While his life of crime ultimately led to prison, the time behind bars provided distance from his extremist group. Friends and family helped Lowry de-radicalize and ultimately rededicate his life to Jesus Christ.
I was born and raised a Christian my whole life. I think that sometimes what happens is we can get tunnel visioned at times being Christians and not opening ourselves up to what other cultures are there and what other cultures do offer. I want it to be a shock to people. I want them to understand that you can be anybody. Nobody is untouchable from what these groups offer.
For 10 years, Lowry has helped extremists find a new way to live through a counterterrorism effort called Parallel Networks. He says the only way to open those doors is through conversations and compassion.
I looked at Jesus Christ and the way that he didn't go into churches to preach to the choir. He went out into areas where people were struggling, people that, adulterous, like Mary Magdalene and others. I'm a firm believer that humanity, we're supposed to treat each other with peace and kindness and love, and this lack of empathy that we have in our communities is what's ultimately, I believe, tearing us apart.
Unfortunately, technology combined with bad actors has torn the social fabric by trying to replace community with an online world. That's why Dr. Kowert wants to remind gamers and others that when things appear bad online or in life, they have the power to make a change.
When things seem a little bit off, the other great thing about games and the internet is you can just switch to a different server or switch to a different game or mute that person or block that person. You don't have to engage in conversations that make you feel uncomfortable.
Brody Carter, CBN News.